Hello, today I'll be reviewing the green cards for Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. If you'd like to revisit the rating scale, it can be found in the white review. Azusa's Mini Journeys, 1 green for an enchantment saga. The first chapter, you may play an additional land this turn. The second, you gain 3 life, and then you exile it and flip it, and it becomes Likeness of the Seeker, a 3/3 enchantment creature human monk, and whenever it becomes blocked, untap up to 3 lands you control. Looking at the front side, it's a few miscellaneous benefits. If you're able to ramp early, it can be good, but the chance that you have a land in hand and it ramps you means that you already have excess lands, and the fact that it doesn't tutor anything up is not that helpful. The backside being a 3/3 for 2 mana is fine, and the block effect can help with ninjutsu for other creatures, but in general is sort of a strange ramp that only works if it actually becomes blocked, giving an additional restriction. Overall, this doesn't quite do enough, and it's a C. Bamboo Grove Archer, 1 green for an enchantment creature, Snake Archer, a 3/3 with Defender and Reach, with Channel, 4 green, discard it, destroy target creature with Flying. Flying is especially relevant in this set because of ninjutsu, and ground boards easily get blocked up. This is actually quite strong, with really good early stats for blocking those flyers, and the ability to either bounce it with other things or just play it later to kill an Inflorton flyer, including the dragons, is very relevant. This is a solid C+. Bearer of Memory, 2 green for an enchantment creature, human monk, a 3/2. For 5 and a green, put a 1/1 counter on target enchantment creature and gains trample until end of turn. This is one of those limited creatures that comes down early and is fine stats, and late game can put you over the top. Unfortunately, this one is a bit lackluster compared to others, only giving 1/1 for 6 mana, and while it does give incremental value unlike some others, which just offer a temporary pump, the mana cost is really high here. Being an enchantment creature and a 3/2 for 3 is fine, and it'll block a number of things, but will die to them most of the time. This is a C-. Blossom Prancer, 3 green for a creature spirit, 4/4 with Reach. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or enchantment card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. If you didn't put a card into your hand this way, you gain 4 life. So mostly, this is a cantripping 4/4 for 5 mana, which is quite solid. The Reach is an additional bonus. As stated before, flying is very important in this set, and the fact that worst comes to worst, you gain 4 life, that's at least a decent bonus for missing. Although looking at 5 cards mean missing is very rare, and you don't want to do that. 4/4 towers over a lot of the other creatures in this set, and getting the card advantage on the ETB is really solid, and can even be bounced with ninjas in some cases. This is a B. Boon of Beseju, 1 green for an instant. Target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the greatest mana value among permanents you control. Untap it. You pretty much never want to use this on defense, although it is an option. Mostly though, this is going to be a +4 or +5 for 2 mana that'll end the game when you cast it. That's pretty solid, and the fact that it can also be used earlier just as a giant growth or similar type effect gives this a decent amount of utility for a combat trick. I never rate combat tricks that high, but this one is one of the better. And in Odyssey or Scourge block, this effect used to cost 5, showing just how much magic has changed. This is a C+. Beseju Reaches Skyward, 3 green for an enchantment saga. The first chapter, search your library for up to 2 basic forest cards, reveal them, put them in your hand, and then shuffle. The second, put up to 1 target land card from your graveyard on top of your library. And then it flips into a Reach creature, which gets +1/+1 for each land you control. So at 4 mana, this fetches out 2 lands from your deck, and then gives you a solid 5/5 or 6/6 with Reach. That's quite a bit, and the land fetching becomes quite significant, especially if you replay this or play a couple of them, helping enhance your draws quite a bit. The second chapter is quite strange because there's basically never a case where you'd want to use this, even with the channel lands. Most of the time a random creature is going to be better than them, but just having the first chapter and the flip creature makes this fairly worthwhile, and this is a B. Careful Cultivation, 2 green for an enchantment aura, enchant artifact or creature. As long as enchanted permanent is a creature, it gets +1/+3 in its Reach, and tap, add green, with also the option Channel. 1 green, discard it, create a 1/1 green human monk creature with tap, add green. Most of the time this is going to be a 2 mana ramp creature. It is quite vulnerable, but the fact that you can do it instant speed at the end of your opponent's second turn gives this quite a bit of an advantage, allowing you to play 4 drops on turn 3 with a fairly decent consistency. The front side's definitely less useful, although, again, it's pretty good stats, 3 toughness and reach. Though the ramp is not something you ever want to use, as that's not making the best use of the stats. Still, all the channel cards are fairly solid just for having the 2 options. So this is a C+. Coiling Stalker, 1 green for a creature snake ninja, a 2/1 with ninjutsu for 1 and a green. Whenever Coiling Stalker deals combat damage to a player, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control that doesn't have a 1/1 counter on it. So if this gets in early, you have a 3/2, and then it can start pumping other creatures. While there aren't the most evasive threats in green, there are in other colors, and this can generally be a decent ninja, pumping up other creatures, making them modified, and maybe allowing them to get in through combat. Later in the game, this loses a lot of utility, and is quite lackluster, even more so than the other ninjutsu creatures, as even if you manage to hit, its benefit is much smaller than drawing a card or bouncing a creature. This is a C. Commune with Spirits, 1 green for a sorcery. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an enchantment or land card from among them, and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This is the definition of a filler card, and without spells matters, this really is not something you want to be playing in your deck. It does hit enchantment creatures and sagas, so that means in most decks it will find you a decent card, but with the amount of tap lands and 1-drops in the set, spending your first turn doing this is not a good thing. This is a D. The Dragon Kami Reborn, 2 and a green. The first 2 chapters, gain 2 life. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Exile one of them face down with a hatching counter on it, then put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Then it flips into a 0/1 egg. Whenever it, or a dragon you control dies, you may cast a creature spell from among the cards you own in exile with hatching counters on them without paying its mana cost. That's a lot of setup to cast a creature for free. Although there's a decent amount of selection on the specific creature, the fact that this 0/1 has to die before it does anything makes this quite lackluster. Even if you're getting, say, a 5-drop, this is going to be on turn 5 at the quickest, which means that casting it for free, you may as well have just drawn it and then cast it. In some sets, the dragon claws would be relevant, but with this it's only the mythic dragons, and if you've already got one of those out, you're winning the game, meaning this is just not good. This is a D+. Fade into Antiquity, 2 and a green for a sorcery. Exile target artifact or enchantment. This is one of those cards where it's either only sideboard or quite playable in the main deck, and in this set, this is definitely main deckable. Just taking a look at the cards that we've already seen in green, it hits 6 of the 8 permanents. A huge amount of relevant creatures in the set are artifacts or enchantments, in addition to picking off some very strong card advantage engines. At 3 mana and sorcery speed, this removal is just a little bit worse than you want to be, but the exile clause does matter quite a bit. This is a C+. Fang of Shigeki, 1 green, enchantment creature snake ninja, a 1/1 with death touch. This actually is one of the most important cards in the set, for green. At common, it blocks ninjas, it can get in, get some damage. It's also an enchantment, it's something that dies so that you can recur it. It just does a lot of things. It doesn't have quite as much synergy as some of the other best 1-drops, but the ability to trade up and the fact this works so well with the common bite spell means it's actually one of the better commons in the set. This is a C+. Favor of Jubai, 3 green for an enchantment aura, enchant artifact or creature. As long as enchanted permanent is a creature, it gets +3/+3 and has reach. With channel, 1 green, discard it. Target creature gets +3/+3 and gains reach until end of turn. This is one of those cards where you really only want to consider the channel part of it. 4 mana for an aura without a completely dominating effect is just not good enough. And with the channel, it's fine. It's a giant growth type effect plus reach, which is surprise against flyers, but green has a fair amount of defenses against flyers in this set, with a couple of common reach creatures, which reduces this utility more. The mana cost on neither effect is good enough, and this is a D. Generous Visitor, 1 green for a creature spirit, 1/1. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, put a 1/1 counter on target creature. There's a huge amount of enchantments in the set, even without trying, and when looking at all the sagas and enchantment creatures, this can grow your team quite quickly. Getting more than one of these on the field is absolutely devastating. This constant value from a 1-drop is great. It being a 1-drop means it can also be used for ninjutsu purposes, giving it additional utility. This is a B. Geothermal Kami, 3 green for a creature spirit, 4/3. When it enters the battlefield, you may return an enchantment you control to its owner's hand. If you do, you gain 3 life. While there are certain sagas you want to bounce, the fact that they turn into creatures means this is worse than it would be in other sort of saga formats. Still, being a 4/3 for 4, and potentially gaining 3 life, is pretty solid. Those stats are quite aggressive, and, combined with any sort of pump effect, can tower over most other creatures in the set. 3 toughness is definitely a vulnerability, dying to a number of effects, as well as 3/2 ninjas, but the ETB value makes up for that. This is a C. Ghost Shintai Boundless Vigor, 1 green for a legendary enchantment creature shrine, a 1/1 with trample, and at the beginning of your end step you may pay 1. When you do, put a 1/1 counter on target shrine for each shrine you control. So this is a self-growing trample creature, only 1 at a time by itself, and you have to pay a mana. That 1 toughness is also a liability if you try to play it out on turn 2, as there's a number of effects that just kill it with value. This is still a decent effect, and in board stalls will slowly grow, and having 2+ shrines means this actually grows fairly quickly, and green is the best color for a shrine deck. It's the kind of card I wouldn't want to play on its own, but with any other shrines this value goes up significantly, making this a C+. Grafted Growth, 2 green for an enchantment aura, enchant land. When it enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on target creature or vehicle you control, and enchanted land has tap at 2 mana of any one color. As 3 mana ramp, this is fine. The 1/1 counter modifying things is relevant, and 3 mana is about the most you want to pay for ramp. The color fixing though is very relevant, and splashing for off-color bombs is quite a real thing in this format. In those sort of situations, this is very helpful, although not as good as some of the other options. This is a C-. Greater Tanuki, 4 green for an enchantment creature dog, a 6/5 with trample, and channel, 2 and a green, discard it. Search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. This is the premium fixing in green. 3 mana to ramp, in addition to taking the land out of your deck, is solid. And then the ability to cast this 6/5 trample is also very relevant. Those stats allow it to tower over most creatures, and with any sort of pump effects, this allows you to win combat quite quickly. Combining this with a haste enabler, good stats late, and the ability to cast it early means this is a premium common and is a C+. Harmonious Emergence, 3 green for enchantment aura. Enchant land you control. Enchanted land is a 4/5 green spirit token with vigilance and haste. It's still a land. And then if it would be destroyed, instead sacrifice this and the land gets indestructible until end of turn. So what we're looking at is basically a 5 mana 4/5 if you want to attack it with it on that turn. Considering the stats, that's not bad. It's much better than the red version of this. The problem with this is it doesn't have trample, and getting in at that point in the game can be quite difficult. If this gets removed, you still get to keep the land, which is an advantage, but the keywords just aren't that helpful. This is a C. Heir of the Ancient Fang, 2 and a green for a creature snake samurai. It enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it if you control a modified creature. It's a 2/3 or 3/4 with that counter. Unfortunately, this is going to be very rarely able to be cast on turn 3 and get the counter. So, on turn 4 or 5, this is going to be a 3/4 for 3, which is fine. It blocks, it attacks okay, but being a 2/3 for 3 just isn't quite cutting it when you have to play it by itself. This is a C-. Historian's Wisdom, 2 green for enchantment aura. Enchant artifact or creature. When it enters the battlefield, if enchanted permanent is a creature with the greatest power among creatures on the battlefield, draw a card. And then, as long as enchanted permanent is a creature, it gets +2/+1. So if you play this on your creature, it gets +2/+1 and you draw a card. That's the goal at least. This is bad against removal, and in general it's 3 mana for +2/+1, which is not a great benefit. Cantripping does matter, and you only really want to play this when they don't have open mana, but along with most of the auras in this set, this just doesn't quite cut it. This is a C-. Invoke the Ancients, 1 green. Sorcery. Create 2 4/5 green spirit creature tokens. For each of them, put your choice of a vigilance, reach, or trample counter on it. This is 8/10 worth of stats for 5 mana with 2 relevant keywords of your choice. Able to block flyers, trample over small things, or just go in and out with vigilance. That's really solid, and green is one of the best at casting these because of all the green ramp adding green. This is an A-. Jugon Defends the Temple, 2 and a green for Enchantment Saga. The first chapter. Create a 1/1 green human monk creature with tap, add green. The second, put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Then it flips into a enchanted creature Dragon Spirit, a flying 2/2 with whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay X. When you do, put X 1/1 counters on that creature. And then, as long as you control 5 or more modified creatures, it gets +5/+5 and has trample. That last clause is quite difficult to get, but if you do, you win the game. Just the ability to make every creature a Hydra, though, is extremely strong, especially late in the game, around turn 5 or 6 when this will be flipping. The ramp can also help with this, and the 1/1 counter distribution matters for modified, of course, for this, but other cards as well. It also just makes cards with keywords much better, and in general, is a lot of value for 3 mana. While I wouldn't really consider it mythic, the effects are really good, and this gives you a lot of things that you actually want, as opposed to most of the sagas where you give a few things that you want and a few you don't. This is a Jukai Preserver, 3 green for an enchantment creature human druid, a 3/3 with when it enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, and channel, 2 green, discard it, put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures you control. This is one of the few channel cards where you actually pretty much only want to cast the front face. There's either a 4/4 for 4 or a 3/3 that helps buff up something else. While holding up the channel can matter for the combat, most of the time it's not going to be enough to swing it in a significant way, so this just becomes a solid enchantment creature. Considering the synergies and just being a 4/4 for 4, this is exactly the kind of creature you want in green. This is a C+. Jukai Trainee, 1 green for a creature human samurai, a 2/2 with whenever it blocks or becomes blocked, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. This effect is always a bit worse than it seems, just because if it's not blocked, it just gets in, doesn't get the bonus, and is a bit lackluster. Blocking as the 3/3 is fine, but considering the amount of ways to get around ground combat, via flying, tapping, or just removal, this doesn't quite measure up. This is a D+. Kami of Transience, 1 green for a creature spirit, a 2/2 with trample, and whenever you cast an enchantment spell, put a 1/1 counter on it. And then at the beginning of each end step, if an enchantment was put into your graveyard from the battlefield this turn, you may return it to your hand. So not only is this a 2/2 trample creature that grows whenever you cast spells, if one of your enchantment creatures dies, then you get this back. That's a lot of value, and even just as a 2/2 or 3/3, when it comes down, that's strong. This is an A. Kappa Tech Wrecker, 1 green for a creature, Turtle Ninja, a 1/3 with ninjutsu for 1 and a green. When it enters the battlefield, put a Death Touch counter on it. When it deals combat damage to a player, you may remove a Death Touch counter from it. When you do, exile target artifact or enchantment that player controls. This is sneakily one of the best ninjas in the set, in that if you ninjutsu it, then it deals damage, and you're able to do hard removal on the most relevant creature types in the set. Then if you bounce it, you can do it again, and even if you just play it on 2 mana, it's a 1/3 Death Touch, meaning that it at least trades for a card if you attack with it. That's a worst case scenario. This is a B+. Kodama of the West Tree, 2 green for a legendary creature, Spirit, a 3/3 with reach and modified creatures you control have trample, and whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. That's quite good stats, although it doesn't give any ability to modify by itself, and it's not an enchantment creature, so it's missing some of the synergies you'd otherwise want to have. Still, it's very easy to put counters on things, and if you get in for a couple of hits, you're at huge advantage. This is an A+. Kura, the Boundless Sky, 3 green for a legendary creature, Dragon Spirit, a 4/4 with flying and death touch, and when it dies, choose 1. Search your library for up to 3 land cards, reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle, or create an XX green spirit creature token, where X is the number of lands you control. So this is a 4/4 flying death touch, with when it dies, you get a 5/5, let's say. Well, this does get shut down a little bit by the pacifism type effects in the set. It's one of the mythic dragons, and as such, it's just an absolute bomb. This is an easy S. March of Burgeoning Life, X and a green. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may exile any number of green cards from your hand. This costs 2 less for each card exiled this way. Choose target creature with mana value less than X. Search your library for a creature card with the same name as that creature, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So this gets you a duplicate of a creature you already control. But you're always going to lose mana value on it, as it's mana value X or less. There's just no way this is good. Even if you do have a duplicate of, say, a decent uncommon, you have to draw one of them, not the other one, then play the creature, then play this, paying the extra mana in order to get the same as what you would have got for paying the mana anyway. This is an F. Master's Rebuke. 1 green, instant. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. This is the bite/fight spell and one of the better ones. This is an instant speed bite and can also deal with planeswalkers. This is the best removal you're going to get in green and at a pretty good mana cost. This is a B. Orochi Merge Keeper. 1 green for a creature snake druid. 1/1. Tap, add green, and as long as it's modified, it has tap, add green. Most of the time you're not going to want to modify your mana dork, so this is just a 2 mana 1/1 ramp. That's fine, but there are other cards that do this better, and the fact that you have to modify it to get the additional bonus is just a bit clunky. This is a C-. Roaring Earth. 1 green for enchantment. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on target creature or vehicle you control. And you can also channel it for X green, discard it to put X 1/1 counters on target land you control. It becomes a 0/0 with haste. It's still a land. Animating your land means it's always going to be 1 smaller than the mana you put into it, and with this one you have to put 2 additional mana. That is a bit of a downside on this, but the front side is fine too. In some sets this sort of effect is quite a bit better, but with the amount of bounce and removal in general, this doesn't quite do enough. This is a C. Season of Renewal. 2 green instant. Choose one or both. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and return target enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. Getting a 2-for-1 Raise Dead for 3 mana at instant speed is pretty good. The fact that one of them has to be an enchantment is a bit of a downside, but there are some very powerful cards that you want to return. 3 mana is a decent amount to spend not affecting the board, but in many cases this is just gonna bring back 2 huge creatures, requiring your opponent to have answers again. As such, this is a C+. Shigeki, Jukai Visionary. 1 green for a legendary enchantment creature snake druid, a 1/3 with 1 green tap, return it to your hand, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped, then put the rest in your graveyard and channel it for XX green, discard it to return X target non-legendary cards from your graveyard to your hand. That's a lot of words, but the important thing is, this is a 2 mana creature that can block as a 1/3. Then, next turn, you block again, you pay 2 mana, tap it, and then you ramp. Then, you can keep repeating this a couple times, and when you're finally done, you return it to your hand, next turn, channel, return 3 or so permanents to your hand, and just destroy your opponent with value. You have to make sure you're not dying at the same time, but the block bounce thing is very strong, and even just the 1/3 body is able to escape a decent amount of removal from the set. There's also the option to just keep it in your hand and use it for channel to get 2 cards back for 6 mana or so. All the options on this are really good, and there's almost never a time where you don't want this. This is an A. Spinning Wheel Kick. XX green sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each of X target creatures and or planeswalkers. So this is a bite spell, but it scales with mana cost. Admittedly, it's quite expensive. 4 mana to hit 1 creature, 6 to hit 2. So it very much depends on the speed of the format. So far it seems like this is a bit slower, and this effect will be significant with lots of stalls. It definitely invites blowouts, and those are devastating if you spend 6 or more mana, which reduces the value of this a bit, but it's still a solid C+. Springleaf Avenger. 3 green for a creature insect ninja, a 6/5 with ninjutsu for 3 and a green. When it deals combat damage to a player, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. The fact that this only returns permanents is a bit of a downside, and 4 mana for ninjutsu is kind of expensive. I'm sure there's some games where this will go off, but the fact that after you ninjutsu it once, it's just not going to get in again at that stage in the game makes it significantly worse than it otherwise would be. In a standard limited game where you're trading blows back and forth, this will be a 2-for-1, which is fine, but nothing special. This is a B-. Story Weave. 2 green for an instant. Choose one. Put 2 1/1 counters on target creature you control, or put 2 lore counters on target saga you control. The next time one or more enchantment creatures enters the battlefield under your control, each enters with 2 additional 1/1 counters on it. Accelerating Sagas is not the biggest effect. That's not going to be worth a card. Even making the flip side come in stronger just doesn't mean that much. In the front side, putting 2 1/1 counters for 3 mana, again it's fine, but just not that exciting. This is a C-. Tales of Master Sashiro, 4 green for an enchantment saga. The first 2 chapters, put a 1/1 counter on target creature or vehicle you control. It gains vigilance until end of turn. And then it flips into a Sashiro's Living Legacy, an enchantment creature snake warrior 5/5 with vigilance and haste. Having haste matters quite a bit here, as most of the sagas don't, making them even slower than normal. This one, however, comes out swinging, and 5/5 is bigger than basically anything else in the set. Giving your other creatures vigilance as well, and pumping them up, means they're able to get in some early hits and then slam with this. There's going to be some games where it's not able to pump up anything, or they just remove the creature you try to buff. But other games it's going to allow you to get in, or just pump your defensive abilities until you can swing in with this 5/5. This is a C. Tamiyo's Safekeeping, 1 green for an instant. Target permanent you control gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, and you gain 2 life. That's a lot of protection for 1 mana, but it's still only protection. The gain 2 life is also relevant, but ultimately this serves one purpose and one purpose only, and is a C. Teachings of Kirin, 1 green for an enchantment saga. The first chapter, mill 3 cards, create a 1/1 colorless spirit token. The second, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Then it flips into a enchantment creature Snake Monk, a 1/1. When it attacks, choose 1. Exile a creature card from a graveyard, then create a 1/1, or exile a non-creature from a graveyard. When you do, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. All the numbers here are quite small, making a 1/1 initially, then 1/1 counter, and then when it attacks you get 1/1s. It just doesn't quite get there. Needing your 1/1 to attack that could maybe become a 2/2 on turn 4, it's just a bit slow. And while it does get a value in the fact of getting 2 1/1s and 2 1/1 counters for 2 mana, it's over such a length of time that the value's just not there, especially on a rare. This is a C-. Weaver of Harmony, 1 green for an enchantment creature Snake Druid, a 2/2 with other enchantment creatures you control get +1/+1, and 1 green tap, copy target activated or triggered ability you control from an enchantment source. You may choose new targets for the copy. So this is an enchantment lore that also is able to copy saga abilities. That one is particularly relevant as there's some very strong sagas to copy. This can also notably copy channel abilities, giving it quite a bit of utility. This is a B+. Web Spinner Cuff, 2 green for an artifact creature equipment spider. Reach. Equipped creature gets +1/+4 and has reach, with reconfigure for 4. This is the only artifact in green, but is a pretty good one. 1/4 reach are really good stats, and the ability to give that to anything else makes it just impossible to kill with damage-based removal. The artifact's synergies are also quite relevant, and its ability to lock down the skies until you can cast your bigger things is really important. This is a C+. And that's the green cards. I hope you enjoyed, and please like, subscribe, and take a look at my Patreon. Have a nice day.